Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of Sefer Mishlei, the book of Proverbs. We are in chapter 15 at verse number 18. I'm sorry, we just read verse number 18. Well, you know what? I'm not sure if we read verse 18 last, so I'll start with 18. Either way, we continue studying this chapter. Let's do this together. Ish chemo yigorem adon. A man of anger causes arguments. I think we did study this one, but this theme has been repeated several times this chapter. So forgive me if I forget. Nothing terrible about learning a verse twice. Someone who's an angry person, as we know, when they are involved in conversations, they are always stoking flames, always making the situation worse, always causing more arguments, escalating the situation rather than de-escalating the situation. Ve'erech hapayim, someone who is patient, yashkitriv, has the opposite effect. Someone who is calm and patient in a situation where there is a fight, where there is anger, where there is disagreement, he can calm it down. He can bring down the temperature. Verse 19, Derech otzel, the way of a lazy person, kimesuchas chodek, like a path that is covered in a hedge of thorns. The immediate idea is, the surface idea is, that a lazy person doesn't cut his hedges. So when he needs to go outside, he's constantly getting scratched up by thorns. Of course, this is a metaphor. Of course, this is a lesson in and of itself. You should take care of your property and your things so that you remove obstacles and so on. But more importantly, a person who is lazy allows the difficult issues in his or her life to get worse and worse, so that life gets harder and harder. Rather, orach yisharim, the way of a straight person, the way of the proper person, is silula, is set, is clear, is open, it is paved. The path is cleared. Now, the interesting contrast here is between a lazy person and a proper person. One would think a proper, the opposite of that would be either wicked or crooked or so on, and that's how it has been. But the point being that laziness is a product of someone who is not on the straight path. So they are one and the same. A proper person is a person who takes care to take care of the things in his or her life and make sure that their path in life is ready, prepared, and removed the obstacles that they have the power and ability to remove. Bein Chacham, this verse is the same as the verse which we had back in chapter 10, verse 1, which started off this entire section of the book of Proverbs, which we are in the middle now. These are the Mishlei Shlomo. We talked about those sections. Go back there to see how we understood this verse and how we introduced this section of Mishlei, which we're still in the middle of and will be for quite another few chapters. So, but just to translate, Bein Chacham, and a wise son, Yisamachav, makes his father happy. Uchsil Adam, and a foolish person, Boze Imo, makes humiliates his mother or embarrasses, shames his mother. We discussed this in more detail back then in chapter 10. Feel free to go back and listen to that if you want to get more depth. Ivelet simcha lachasar leiv. Foolishness is it makes a person who is chasar leiv, who is lacking understanding, who is a person who is foolish, is happy by foolishness. How many times have we seen people be happy by something they see in the news or something that they hear, something that happened, which ultimately anyone smart realizes that it's not such great news. But they'll be happy, especially if the news involves suffering to someone. We always have to be careful. But a chasar leiv, someone who's foolish, someone who really doesn't understand, can find all kinds of silly things a source of happiness. V'ish tevuna, but a person of understanding, yiyasher loches, you will always walk on a straight path. And always, you always realize when you hear news, A straight path means you understand there's good, there's bad, there's things that we don't understand, there's things that we may not quite fully comprehend what the ultimate outcomes are going to be, and so on and so forth. Hafer machashavos be'ein sod. Now this is verse 22, a lesson that is just so important. Hafer machshavos, if you want to ruin your plans, the way you ruin here machshavos, thoughts, but over here in this context it means plans that are drawn out are going to be ruined be'ein sod, when there is no counsel. Sod could mean secret, but it also means, a council where people get together and discuss ideas and plans. If you don't have input from people, if you don't get advice from others, your plans will be ruined. The key to success is getting together with the people that know, the people that are relevant, and listening to advice and trying to entertain the different possibilities, the different plans of action, and so on. That is how you have a successful plan. If you want to have a ruined plan, don't listen to anybody. The more advice you get, the more advisors you have, the more likely you are to be successful. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean you need to ask 8 million people, right? It means that when you have many yoatzim, right, there's a limit, right? That's common sense. But still, if you get input from all of the relevant places, you're more likely to be successful. If you have a council of yes men, where everyone around the table just says, yes, dear leader, this is what we should do, and you're not getting input and playing with different possibilities and different courses of action, you're less likely to succeed. Simcha la'ish b'manei piv. It's a fact. People know. People are happy to love to hear themselves speak, right? Right? A person is happy when he has an answer. Everybody loves to have a retort. Everyone loves to have a quip, something to say in response. Just watch TikTok and you'll know right away. Any video shorts. Everyone loves, I'm going to have a one-line zinger that's just gonna whatever, put down the other guy. Everybody loves to make a statement. However, so that's just nonsense. People love to listen to themselves. However, Vidavar be'ito, the proper word at the proper time, matov, how beautiful that is. In other words, you don't always have to have a response, no matter how much you love to say it. But at the right time, in the right place, the right person saying the right thing, that could be beautiful. That could be a wonderful thing. So that one-liner that you have, if it's a reasonable one, if it's not insulting to others and it's actually true, wait for the right time, wait for the right place, and say it in the right context, and it could be very useful. Otherwise, it's better keep your mouth shut. Verse 24, Ora chaim lemalo lemaskil. The way of life, the path of life, to one who is intelligent, is constantly going upward. An intelligent person is constantly improving, constantly getting better. Leman sur mishol mata, because if you don't constantly grow, right, then you're going to go down. There's no such thing as neutral. There's no such thing as, okay, now I'm an expert, now I don't need to learn more. A masculine, intelligent person is constantly moving upward, is constantly taking that path upward in order to stay away from falling downward into hell, right? Because that's what would happen if we stopped growing, is we would fall. Staying stable is not an option. Staying stable is equivalent, is falling. Beit ge'im misach Adonai, the house of the prideful, the house of the one who is arrogant, God will destroy. This is verse 25. V'yatzev givul almanah, but he will establish the boundaries, he will establish the home of the almanah, of the widow. God will give support to the one who needs it. The one who is arrogant will ultimately fail. To'avat Adonai machshavot ra. What is disgusting, what is an abomination to God? It is plans and thoughts of evil. The people that plan and devise ways to hurt others, devise ways to accomplish and achieve evil things. That is the abomination to God. U'tohorim imrei noam. But pleasant, beautiful, pure words that are proper, said at the right time, in the right place, with the right purpose, with the right intention, these are words of sweetness. These are words of purity. Ocher beiso botzei abatza, one who is constantly seeking, this is verse 27, constantly seeking betza, constantly seeking profit, and betza in this case, botzei abatza in this context means someone who's constantly looking for profit at the expense of others. Profit, inappropriate profit. Ocher beiso, he's ruining his house. He might think, oh, I'm getting rich, I'm going to buy this big beautiful house and a fancy car and go on fancy vacations, but ultimately he's ruining his house, he's turning his home into a home based on evil. But a person who hates free gifts is a person who will live a proper life. What is the contrast here? Asoni matanos. Obviously, when a person gives you a gift in the proper context, that's not a bad thing. But a person who loves gifts, who wants things that he doesn't earn, that he gets for free, that is the ultimate botzei habotza, a person who just wants things from others without having worked for it. Building a house on things that a person honestly worked for and honestly achieved and honestly attained, that is yichya, that brings life. But if you're constantly seeking profit at the expense of others without honestly earning it, that's ocher beiso, that ruins your home, that ruins your family. That's verse 27. Verse 28, Leiv tzadik yeheged la'anos, when in conversation, the heart of the righteous person, yehegeh, is constantly studying before he answers. If you ask the question, he doesn't have the answer right away. This is so different than watching some of what passes for silly debates nowadays in social media. Where the one who wins the debate is the one who has the fast, quick answer that takes down the other guy. But this is exactly the opposite of what a real righteous person does. A real righteous person thinks before he answers. Yehegeh means to study. He studies it, and he, like, v'saraso yehegeh yomam v'layla. And in the Torah, one is constantly diligent to study over and over again. Repeat. Some translate this word as rehearses. Yehegeh means not just to study, but to study and study again and study again and study again before you have an answer. The wise person is not the one that has the quick retort that he can answer today, zip, zap, bam, and take on the other guy, but it's the guy who says, let me think about that, let me look it up, let me read about it, let me talk to the experts about it, and I'll get back to you next week with a good, solid answer. I know that doesn't pass very well in today's, quick 1, 2, 3, need an instant answer, need an instant gratification world. But that's what a leiv tzaddik does. That's proper, that's righteous. Ufi risha'im, however, the mouth of the evil person, Yabia Ra'os, is constantly blurting out, is constantly spit overflowing with evil and false and nonsense. Yabia is like the overflowing spring. He always has what to say, and it's never going to be something good. Verse 29, Rachok Adonai me'erishoyim, God is distant from the evil people, right? Utfilas tzadikim yishma, and he always listens to the prayers of those who are tzaddik. A person who is evil can't simply just turn to God. God is not interested. Like we said a few verses ago, To'avas Hashem machshavosra, Beit Geim, the house of the arrogant, Yisach Adonai, God destroys. God is not interested in listening to such people, right? The prayers of the tzaddikim are the prayers that are listened to, those that are righteous. Of course, it doesn't mean everyone has a chance to become a tzaddik. That's your option. You can change your ways. You can approach God, but don't do it through arrogance. Don't do it through lies and cheating and botzei habotza and seeking profit at other people's expense. Verse 30, Ma'or einayim yisamach leiv. This verse is clearly referring to good news. When something lights up the eyes, right? When you hear something nice, right? Yisamach leiv, it makes us happy. When you hear something great, I got a new job, I got a raise, I had a baby, I took an X-ray and it was negative for something terrible. It's a good news. Good news makes us happy. Shemua tova, and good news, tidashen otzem, fattens up the bones. Meaning, we all know when one is sad, it's very hard to celebrate, it's very hard to eat. One can eat, one can celebrate, one can enjoy when one hears good things. And of course, we have a party, and that's what fattens up the bones. Ozen shomas tochachas chayim. Again, emphasizing the importance of listening to tochacha, to listening to criticism. The ear that listens to tochachas, the ear that listens to criticism, to critique, Chaim, right? That is the critique of life. That is the discipline that leads to life. That is the ozen shomas, the ear that listens. Bekerev chachamim tolin. Such a person resides among the intelligent people. Because the smart people are the ones that listen to criticism. The ones that refuse to listen, refuse to improve, refuse to grow, will not be among the wise. They will remain among the stupid. Porea musar mois nafsho, a person, and of course the contrast to what we just read, one who tears away, who ignores musar, who ignores critique, who ignores criticism, who ignores discipline. Mois nafsho, he actually is hating himself. He thinks, I know the right way and I'm sticking on this way no matter what everyone else says, right? He's acting as if he loves himself, but he actually hates himself because he'll never improve, he'll never get better. He's always going to remain stuck in his bad, unsuccessful, inappropriate ways. That's what the person who ignores musar, who ignores criticism. But one who listens to criticism, right? Kona lev, he acquires a good heart. That is how one achieves having a good heart. That is how one becomes a better person. And now this last verse 33 kind of wraps together all of the ideas, many of the ideas that I have been trying to teach over and over again in Proverbs. And as I've been teaching this, and not just in Proverbs, but throughout what I've been teaching, the connection between Yiras Hashem, awe of God, and the connection between that and having the humility, right? That awe leads to humility, right? And humility leads to achieving wisdom, and one achieves wisdom through musar, through listening to criticism, because one is humble and not arrogant. All of those things are tied together in this last verse, and it's a wonderful verse to end this incredibly beautiful chapter. Yiras Adonai, the awe of God, is what? What does it mean to have Yiras Hashem, to have awe of God? Is musar chochma, right? That is the musar, that is the criticism that leads to wisdom. Vilifnei chavod, right? And before one gets honor, anava, one must have humility. So, because humility is deeply tied to Yiras Hashem, to awe of God. When one experiences the awe of the greatness of God, the greatness and power and beauty of His universe, one realizes how humble we are, how small we are, and then one immediately is open to listening to criticism that is meant appropriately, that is meant to help us improve. And that's how one gains wisdom. One gains wisdom only by recognizing that he lacks wisdom and that he needs to learn. Then one can listen to others. And that comes before honor. And then when one achieves that wisdom, then one can achieve a situation of true honor. And this is all, it's incredibly beautiful how in just these 7 words here, so much is packed into these 7 words of verse 33. Thank you so much for studying Proverbs and Mishlei chapter 15 together. It's an incredibly powerful and beautiful chapter. I wish everyone a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. I hope, thank you so much again for participating. If you have comments, feel free to comment in any of the public forums where this podcast appears. Or if you want to send me something private, feel free to send me an email at weinrebsaul, that's WEINREBSAUL, @gmail.com. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.